Hello everyone, I'm Annie Gibbins and you're listening to Memoirs of Successful Women, the podcast where you get to hear candid conversations with fascinating women from around the globe who share aspects of their business and life journey, how they measure their success, and what they have learnt along the way. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Memoirs of Successful Women. Today, I get to introduce to you Anne Livingston, who's a published author and spiritual mentor. She's recently just ended a 3-year nomadic journey. So I look forward to sharing with you about that and living solely based on her intuition. She teaches others how to embody their power and light. And her passion is teaching others how to live in an authentic, soul-aligned life. She also mentors those who are committed to speaking their truth while sharing their story to the world. Welcome to the program, Anne.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Terrific. What does it mean to be soul aligned to start? What does that mean? For those, just to set the scene for the people who are going to be listening to this podcast, when you say you're soul aligned, what does that mean about you?
So for me, I felt like I got to the point in 2016, beginning of 2017, where I felt like I had been living my life or creating my life based off of someone else's vision. And when I finally saw that the life that I had created was kind of falling apart around me, I finally had to sit and look at, what do I actually want? When I sit and really ask myself the question, like, what lights up my soul? What makes me feel excited again? What's the thing that, like, when I wake up in the morning, I jump out of bed and can't wait to do that thing. Like that's ultimately what it means to me, is just the life that lights you up, that feels natural. It feels easy. Not to say that you don't still have, struggles and hurdles and all of that, but it's just, you wake up every day and you're like, oh yes, this is it. This is the thing that I have been dreaming of.
My soul is finally aligned. That's a beautiful way of saying it. Exactly.
Yeah.
You wake up and you go, I feel me, and I feel that I'm ready to lean into who I am and embrace what's next.
Yeah, absolutely.
Beautiful. What a moment. All right. So we'll come back to that later. So that led you to a 3-year journey, a nomadic journey. What did you do in that time?
I basically answered the questions, who am I and why am I here? And leading up to that, I had been a teacher. My background's in education. I taught for 7 years. I lost my teaching career due to school closures. I was in a marriage that was emotionally and verbally abusive. I got divorced, was in another relationship. So that was kind of what set the stage. That was what prepared me to get to the point where I was like, okay, what is going on with my life? Who am I and why am I here? And when my last relationship ended at the end of 2016, I realized that what I really wanted was freedom. I really wanted freedom and independence. I had already been an entrepreneur for years. My lease, I didn't need to renew my lease. And I was like, you know what? Let's just see where this leads. So I got the intuitive hit in February of 2017 that said, sell all your stuff and hit the road. And it made no logical sense at all. I had 2 cats and 0 car. So I was like, I don't know how this is going to work out. But, we all have those moments in life where we hear, I call it the whisper of your soul, where you hear that little whisper that's like, what if you did that thing, right? And then immediately the louder voice, which is the ego, comes in and says, it doesn't make sense. It's not safe. You don't have enough money. It's all the yeah buts, right? All the reasons why you're not supposed to do the thing. And I finally just decided, well, let me just see. I know that there are all these reasons that it won't work out, but what if it does? And how will my life be different? What will it look like instead if I actually follow that nudge? And so that was where it started. And then I left Chicago in 2017 and started off in small town Mississippi, which is not the most glamorous place to start off, but it's where I was being guided. I had a good friend who lived there. My intention was to be there for 3 weeks. I stayed for 8 months because my business hit rock bottom and I hit financial rock bottom. And it was just like, wall after wall after wall, closed door after closed door after closed door. Nothing was working. And I got to the point where I was like, I'm pretty sure this is what God told me to do, right? Like, but for whatever reason, it's not really working out. And even though nothing in my life appeared to be working out, it was that deep soul, like, I know this is where I'm supposed to be. Not that I was meant to be in Mississippi, but it was just, I know this is the path. I know I didn't mishear my intuition. I know that there's something in this for me. And so I just kept moving forward. And obviously there's lots of lessons that I'm sure we'll get into, but that was the jumping off point. And then in March of 2018, I left Mississippi, and I basically traveled for the next 2.5 years solely based off of my intuition. So what that looked like was, when you feel attracted to someone or something, and you just feel that feeling in your body that draws you in, you know, and it was that feeling that I had with the United States. I paid attention to, where am I energetically feeling drawn in my body, within the country. And I was renting a car at the time. I still didn't have a car at that time. And so I started off with just paying attention to, where in my body am I feeling drawn within the US? And then from there, I had an atlas and a pendulum, and I double checked. I started to cultivate this relationship with my intuition, because I had never trusted myself in that way before. And so I was building this trust, first paying attention to the feeling, and then checking it with the external tools. And when I got a yes, based on the atlas and the pendulum, then I went to the Airbnb website. And from there, I looked at, within this general vicinity, what are the places that are available? What does my budget look like? And I started to read the energy in the pictures. And that's ultimately how I chose the places. And I stayed in over 40 Airbnbs based on that system. Which is like, while I was living it seems so normal, but you tell other people and you're like, yeah, no one else does life like this.
No one goes on a road trip without a car and 2 cats.
Right.
And then ends up in Mississippi going, why am I even in Mississippi? So
I know.
So was Mississippi a mistake, or was it a necessity for you to reach that rock bottom and to totally find yourself in that moment?
It was a necessity. It was such a necessity. And I hated it in the moment. I hated all 8 months. I had so many moments where I had moments where a lot of darkness. I had suicidal thoughts, even though I knew I was never actually going to commit suicide. But I had the moments of, oh my God, like, I can't seem to figure out life. Like, nothing is working for me. And so it would be so much easier to just end this lifetime and start again in another lifetime. I had moments where I had, a negative balance in my bank account, and I had no food. Like, I was making homemade tortillas out of flour and water, and I had some oatmeal that, but because I wasn't relying on my friend to support me, even though I had a roof over my head. And so I had to reach out to a family member, and I was like, I just need $50. I need some vegetables and some fruit to nourish my body. And then from there, I'll figure it out. But and so I got that. And then that moment when the money came in and I went to the grocery store, and a lot of people, I think, in that situation would say, well, let me buy the cheapest food possible to try to save money, because I don't know when more money's coming in. And I just was like, you know what? I'm so worthy of having high quality food, because that is what is going to help me create the rest of my life. And so I have to nourish myself first. So I bought organic food. I bought grass-fed beef. Like, I did the highest quality, because I knew that it mattered. And from there on, I told myself, I will never skimp on food again. I will never not nourish myself. Like, I will always be the first priority, even before paying my bills, because everything else is created from the inside out. And so that was a huge lesson that I learned. Another lesson that I learned was how to find true gratitude when you have nothing else, So it was like, I had no money. I had no clients on the books. I had a lot of time. I had a lot of time on my hands. And so I was meditating for hours a day. I had no car. So the easiest space to get to outside was a cemetery. The cemetery was like the most beautiful spot in small town Mississippi, and it was across the street. So I went across the street and I found a pine tree and I sat down under the tree and meditated, and I would sit there and I would listen to the birds and I would pay attention to the breeze. And I found genuine joy and gratitude with that, with nothing, and it really was the foundation of everything else, because what I truly learned in those moments was that safety and security was not dictated based off of the external world, that I had to feel safe and secure with nothing else. I had to feel gratitude with nothing else reflecting back to me. I had to feel abundance with nothing else being reflected back to me. And those lessons served me in the years to come. And even, now it's just with all the chaos happening in the external world, I don't rely on the external world to prove to me that I'm okay.
Which is incredibly empowering and freeing, isn't it?
Yep.
While we are, it's almost like a little feather in the wind, it's kind of like, well, things are not good, so then life's not good, so if we and it's so easy to then get in tune with our moods, our emotions, our decisions based on, external variables, which often have nothing to do with us, really.
Right. Right.
So,
it's true.
And so it sounds simple, but it's actually very hard. It's very hard to give that up and retrain your mind and yourself to actually just back yourself, trust yourself, listen to yourself, particularly when there's a great cost, and that's what you've done. You've actually gone to rock bottom to learn that. And I don't think everyone has to, by the way.
No, I think everyone's looks different.
Everyone's journey looks different, but it's an incredible revelation, and you can tell, in your body now and in your energy and in your speech. That's right. It's almost like, well, I don't, as long as I'm living my life and my truth, that's good enough. It's fine. I'm not relying on anyone else. Those 8 months in Mississippi, when you felt before a strong calling, I should sell everything and pack up and go. And then you spend 8 months and everything plummets. I'm sure there's many listeners now thinking you're in those moments. How do you continue to back yourself? When you're saying you did your, you were led by your intuition, and then it takes 8 months for you to go, oh, okay, what was I trusting in? So, and I'm a big believer that, sometimes that does not mean at all that your intuition was wrong. It actually means that you need to have this time, and many times are rocky, and that's how we learn the most. What was your mind saying a lot, just so that other people who are in that phase at the moment can be encouraged, that you believe strongly that you should have been doing what you're doing, but everything is actually even getting worse and worse and worse. And that, how do you continue to back yourself, and not retreat back to your previous behavior?
Yeah. So there were a lot of pieces that kind of played a part. Part of it is that I'm very stubborn. I'm very stubborn. And my stubbornness has served me when I use it appropriately, like being in Mississippi. I also was marathon training at the time. And so having that level of mindset training while training for a marathon really helped me. Not that everyone needs to run a marathon, but I had those moments where I was just like, God, if I can train for a marathon in the South in the summer, like I can handle anything in life, like it was one of those moments where I was just like, yep, I can do just about anything in life. I had a few clients here and there, like I had a small group coaching program. And the women that I had in there, I told them after the fact, I was like, you guys really saved me, because it gave me a purpose to continue to show up and be, and to teach and to serve. I continued to show up on social media. I shared my journey. I kept tapping into what is the lesson in all of this. And I always knew that there were people a few steps behind me. And so I've always seen myself as a leader. I've always been a leader. And so I knew that even though I was struggling through whatever I was going through, I did have some things that were rock solid, like my self-care routine. And there are so many women in particular who put themselves on the back burner. And so I just kept teaching what I felt really confident in, even though there were pieces in my life that were completely falling apart. And I was like, I have no clue how I'm getting out of this one, but I have a couple of things that I do know for sure, so I just kept teaching those things. And then, looking back, there were so many things that I tried and that weren't working. I had a lot of courses that I created and was trying to sell and launched, and everything bombed. Like no sales at all, and so I kept thinking like, God, I know that I have value, like I know that I have things I'm supposed to be teaching. And I know that I'm really good at what I do, but like, for whatever reason, it's just not working. And looking back, and I had some glimpse back then where I was like, okay, if none of this shit is working, then that tells me that I'm being guided to something else, So I really did try to shift into, it's not that I'm failing, it's that I haven't figured it out yet. So let me just keep paying attention to like, what's the next nudge and the next nudge and the next nudge. And, now 3 years later, I'm like, thank God all those things bombed, because now I'm doing what I genuinely love. And not that it will take, 3 years of failure for people, because again, everyone's journey is different. But I do truly believe that every single time a door is closed, it is, God's spirit, source, universe, whatever, guidance, guiding you to like, where do you actually want to be? And if I sit and actually reflect, and I have done this before, I've asked myself, like, did I actually know back then? And I probably did on some level, if I was really honest with myself, and if I worked with coaches who asked me different questions, potentially, I think I maybe would have realized 3 years ago, like, no, Anne, you really do want to be a writer. Like I was getting that intuitive hit of like, write the book. I knew there was a book, at least one book within me. I started my first podcast while I was in Mississippi. So like there were clues, but I don't think I really had the faith. And I'm sure that there were other things it all worked out the way it was meant to, but it's just like, if you're really honest with yourself, I think that we always have clues of what we actually want to do, but we don't trust that it'll work out. So we try this other safe route. And I'm like, oh, everyone else is a coach. I should be a coach like everyone else,
I do know. And I think that it's a classic thing of also, the concept of having a podcast or having a book, we layer things on what sounds more prestigious, important, of value. And so when we're in a moment, I'm sure you've related to this because I've been there, you sort of like go, well, if this isn't working, then how could I do that? Even though deep down you dream about it or think about it, And so, whereas the reality is, none are better than any others. It's actually just what aligns with you. That's right. You could be the most amazing, author or TV host or whatever, and then not good at coaching, or like it's not as if there's a level up. And I think in a lot of our journeys, it's like you do this and then you get to the next level and the next level and the next level, whereas it doesn't always happen that way. I think you raised an interesting point before too, and I because I coach so many women, that you said you knew deep down, some of those elements were there, and they've just come out. And I strongly believe that, most people who go through these massive journeys go, even as a child, I knew I loved certain things or dreamt about certain things, or I knew I had these skills. Like you said, I've always been a leader. I know I'm that, I value my self-care because I actually, and when you then made that decision to buy the premium quality food, because you've got these sort of qualities that are actually deep down and you're not consciously aware of them,
Right,
you just do them. And then when you're in that, lean into where your heart aligns, you're actually then giving them permission to activate on steroids, right? So suddenly the world opens, but you actually had those qualities. I think a lot of people are looking for new qualities, or what could I do next, or try new things, whereas it's actually in you. And then it's just finding that, which is why sometimes you need to go to the cemetery and sit under the tree for a while, right?
Exactly. Well, and I think the other thing too, and I'm sure a lot of, your clients can relate to this as well, that like a lot of us, when we're entrepreneurs and when we're creative in some way, we have a lot of gifts. There's not just one thing that we do, right? And that's been one of my struggles over the years, is like, I am a coach. I am a mentor. My background's in education. I know how to teach people how to do what I've done. Like, I'm really good at that. You know, I'm really good at making the abstract tangible. But I'm like, I'm a writer, I'm a speaker, I'm a storyteller, I'm a nomad, you know, it's like, and I do all these things, but I think it's also a matter of for me, I had to look at my core values as well. One of my core values is impact. Impact is so important to me. And so I've always had to look at, I have all of these gifts, and they do all kind of intertwine with one another. But if one of my core values is impact and another one is freedom, how do I use all of those gifts to make sure that I'm always aligned with my core values? Because sometimes, like the traditional coaching route, like I never really felt like I fit into the traditional anything, but definitely like the traditional coaching world. It was like, yeah, I am a coach, but I don't look like any of these other coaches, you know? Yeah. And so I've had to really individualize, you know, and I think that some people really kind of fit into the mainstream, and I just didn't. And then there's some people who understand, like, I'm sure there are people that are like, yeah, Anne, I don't fit into the mainstream either, you know? And it's like, embrace the fact that you can't really label yourself.
I know. I had that revelation a few years ago when someone said, "You're quite quirky, aren't you?" And I went, "Yeah, but I like that. Isn't that a good thing?" And I realized that I was actually, really comfortable in my own self, but other people were going, "You're not mainstream. You don't, you know, you're not doing someone else's formula." Or I'll get interviewed and they'll say, "So who are you modeling off?" And I went, me? I go, I know that sounds really weird, but I didn't look at someone else and went, I want to be exactly them. And it was sort of like, but then that surprised a lot of people, because everyone thinks there's a formula and you want to just do the course, do it that way, you know, get this career, do it in a certain way. And then there's other ones that are people like us who just go, well, yeah, there's elements of that. And then you make it your own, you know, which
That's
is
exactly what I did.
Bold, but it is that, you know, to be able to have an impact and to feel freedom and to, you know, make a difference and to feel that satisfaction. It's like, to get to that level, you actually do need to go, okay, well, I'm taking the ingredients and then I am making them authentically mine, you know. And people will resonate with that, obviously. You know, that's what does make you, you know, more and more people are looking for that authenticity and someone that they connect with and understand their journey. And there'll be people listening now going, oh, wow, you know, I'm just like Anne, you know, I've had those crazy moments, or I'm currently living in a car, or I'm doing these things. And it's like, yeah, I'm not crazy. I'm actually just on a journey, and I'm seeing where that takes me. So now let's look there. And you have been a teacher, you know how to teach, you've been an entrepreneur. How do you come through that journey? And you've been at rock bottom and then pull it all together as an entrepreneur. What sort of skills did you use, and how did you suddenly turn it all, you know, pull it all together, I suppose?
I kept pivoting. I pivoted a lot. I allowed myself to always evolve. Like, I think that there's this belief sometimes that we kind of get to this like final product, you know, and it's just like, you get to this final product and you're like, okay, this is who I am. Now I can present myself to the world. Right.
Yes.
And I don't think that I will ever fully arrive. Like, I think that we're always growing and changing and evolving. I think that we're always kind of, not that you always have to rebrand. I will say, though, that I felt the most aligned and the most, you know, feeling like I had arrived when I published my first book this year in March. It was like, once I had something tangible and I could say, this is a piece of my story, this is a piece of who I am, my book really became kind of the pillar of the rest of my business, you know, because there are so many pieces and layers to my story that I can pretty much show up and teach on. I can teach on spirituality. I can teach on codependency. I can teach on addiction. I can teach on self-love and self-care. I can teach on authenticity and, you know, like there are so many different pieces. And so that was really kind of like the foundation to show up and allow myself to really fully be seen. But I would say I think I looked at the core of just like my story informs kind of everything else. So I feel like my life informs my business and my business informs my life. And I think that sometimes there are people who try to keep the two separate.
Yes.
And I just can't. I just cannot keep the two separate because they're so interconnected. And so I just allowed that to be enough. I just allowed really who I am to be enough. And actually, so when I'm back in Phoenix, I officially rooted down in Phoenix, but I was here also for 8 months. 8 seems to be a thing. But I was here for 8 months staying with a different friend before I got my own place. And again, hit some financial rock bottoms, ups and downs and all the things. And she said to me, she came into my room one morning and she said, I just want you to know that you will always have a roof over your head and you will always have food. And she said, you being here is such a gift. Like you just being who you are is impacting my life. Wow. And that was so powerful because in our society, we feel like our worth is wrapped up in what we do.
Yes.
And it was the first time that I fully understood that I am most impactful just in me being who I am. Mm-hmm. And so I am the core of everything that I create, right? And then it just all expands from there. And so I don't know if that answers your question, but that's what came up for me. I'm like, I don't know if that answers the question, but that's what's true for me. So.
Yeah, no, that's totally amazing. What do you now look back at then and wish you had done differently since you've come to this revelation through your journey? And then, you'd been a teacher for years, you'd had this life, you'd had a marriage, you'd made choices. If you were talking to those people listening to this podcast who are at that sort of frustrated journey of, I don't even know who I am, what would you have done a little bit earlier?
I think so. I'm in this space where I know the value of investing in ourselves, right? Investing in ourselves is really powerful. And I had so many moments where I invested in myself because I feel like I didn't have enough. Like I was, you know what I mean? Like I was investing in myself because I believed that someone else had the answer. Yeah. And I do believe, of course, as someone who's a mentor, I know the value that I have to offer someone who invests in the work that we do together. So I believe in that. I believe deeply in that. I think that a lot of people invest because they feel like something is missing. Yeah. And so I invested tens of thousands of dollars into coaches and programs, trying to find the answer, trying to find like that secret piece that was finally going to unlock something. And every single time I did that, I always came back to myself, realizing, oh, I actually have the answer. Okay. And so I will not sit here and say it was a waste of money because I honestly don't regret anything I've ever done in my life. Everything was a lesson, Yeah. But if I had to pinpoint something that I wish I would have learned sooner, yes, it would have been that, because I feel like it would have saved me a lot of time and money. And I've definitely had some challenging conversations with some coaches that I've had where it's like they tried to teach me to do things one way, and I was just like, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good in my body. It's not authentic. Like I can't do it that way, Yeah. And so I learned a lot of trust. And so I would also just say, like, trust yourself, like if someone is, of course, mentors have value and wisdom and guidance, and pay attention to that. And also everyone's journey is different. And so what works for one person may not necessarily work for the other person,
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Anyone who says they have one way of doing things, I instantly pull back because, oh my goodness, I've met so many people from around the globe and they are so different. It never ceases to amaze me how different women are, particularly because that's what I spend my time with. And that's one of the reasons I do this podcast, because I think we get a distorted reality in our own little bubble of what people are like, and we're all so diverse and we all have such different ways of looking at things and our beliefs, values, everything. So that's right, to definitely highly value coaching and learning about yourself. But that's right. It doesn't mean that anything is wrong. No one has things wrong. They actually define who they are and then amplify that, right?
Yep, absolutely.
None of us are made wrong. You don't look at a kid, a small child who's just bouncing around. If you walk past a little primary school, you would not look at any of those kids and go, they've got something wrong with them. They're all just happy little kids who are, learning about themselves and their bodies. And then as you grow, suddenly for life's journey, then makes you feel certain things or put some certain narratives in your head about who you are and what you are capable of or what you should do and all these sorts of things. But it's really interesting that so many women struggle with, am I enough? And that's the message that I've heard from you. You're more than enough. Everyone's more than enough. We're all here for a reason, and it's just actually going, so who are you? How are you different and your own self, and let that give yourself permission. That's what I think your journey did. It gave you permission to just pull back and find that person, and you're so much happier and healthier because of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's a huge piece of what I do with my clients. When I do work with people one-on-one, it's just, sometimes I feel like I'm just the permission fairy, it's just like, because again, it's like I invested so much money in thinking that someone else had the answer, that I'm very intentional and mindful when I'm coaching someone else or when I'm mentoring someone else, that like, I don't have the answer. I can tell you what worked for me. And ultimately what I do is I help guide people to their authentic truth. I teach them some of the tools that I've utilized to help them tap into their intuition, right? I mean, that's it. Because ultimately they have the answer. And then sometimes they're just like, but can I really do that? I'm like, yeah, you can. Yes, you can. You can do whatever the hell you want.
Exactly. I know. That's the best thing. So just do it. See how it goes, It's like once you decide failure is not a bad thing, it's a learning curve. Yeah. Kind of go, wow, the whole world opens up.
It's so true. It's so true.
Why do you think we struggle with intuition so much? What happens in our lives, do you think, that holds us back from using or believing in our intuition?
I love this question. It hasn't been asked specifically in that way, but I love talking about this. So I'm glad you asked it. I think that we're taught from a very young age that someone else outside of ourselves has the answer. And so that is also paired with, a lot of us were raised as people pleasers, right? So as children, we weren't taught how to love ourselves. We weren't taught really how to truly take care of ourselves. We were taught for the most part, and I don't believe it was intentional. I think that our parents all did the best that they could, right? Yeah. But it's been generational, that in order to receive love from our parents or our family members, we needed to be someone that may not have been super authentic. Yeah. In order to receive love from them. And so we become these people pleasers. And so we know those moments of like I experience this gut feeling, right? And I had this a lot as a child where like, I could feel that gut feeling of like, no, I don't want to do. And I was a very stubborn child. I don't want to do that, but it's like, you had to follow the rules. There were rules and boundaries within your household. And if you didn't do it, you get punished. And so over time, you learn that if I behave this way, then love is removed from me, right? Or taken away, and there are consequences, and feels like love is withheld. If I act in this way, I receive love from my parents. And so it becomes conditioned over time. And by the time I decided to become a nomad, I was 35 years old. I still had my family in my ear saying, that doesn't make sense. Don't do it. Yada, yada, yada. Like, I can't believe you're selling that. Oh my God, you're selling that. And I was just like, back off.
Yeah. Get out of my head.
Yeah. And it was just, and I love my family dearly. It was just like, I had it. I was just like, I need to learn who I am and what I want. And so now I'm so connected to my intuition that no one can tell me that I'm wrong. People can have different beliefs. That's fine. People can see the world through a different lens. Like everyone, to me, like everyone is allowed to have their experience of life. We don't have to agree. but no one's going to sit there and tell me that I'm wrong because I know what my intuition is telling me. And so I trust myself so deeply. But it starts, as children have their own intuition. They're all in their intuition, but then it's conditioned over time to not trust themselves.
Such a fascinating topic. And it makes sense for those who are listening in going, yeah, that's right. I did know I've got natural tendencies, but they've been curbed for a reason. And many of them are good. Yep. I'm a mum of 5. I remember, when you're parenting them, it's like you have to behave in a certain way and you have to do things in a certain way just to get through life. So it's not a criticism. It's like, there are confines of that. And there's certain behavioral expectations that you need to teach human beings, right? But somewhere in there that has to be an awakening to go, yes, I get all of that, but then now as a healthy adult, how do I now make that appropriate for me and who I am and who I should become, and it doesn't mean that then that activates disrespect or rudeness or any, the negatives of society. You can actually be completely empowered and while being sensitive to, sort of social requirements, I suppose. So it's such a learning curve. So those who are listening, tap into your intuition, really spend some time activating it. And it's practice, isn't it, right? When you're rewriting a narrative that you've had for possibly decades, it actually is just practicing that, getting in tune. That's right. Seeing what happens, trusting yourself, looking for the evidence, tapping into how you feel, how you respond. And then that's what I've heard over your journey. You've actually learned how to trust it more and more and more. And now you're like, I cannot imagine not being this person.
Yeah. I mean, it's so natural. And, for people who are parents out there, because my background is in early childhood, and even though I'm not a mom, I have thought about if I were a parent, like how would I do things differently, and how would I help a child to really trust their intuition? Because like you said, there are boundaries that need to be set. There are safety boundaries that need to be set. So like, yes, there are things, right? But there are other things that you can do, like allowing children choice, and not that you have to give them like unlimited options, right? But you could give 2 options, for a snack or for breakfast or even, whatever, like, so that they start to practice, okay, these are the limitations, these are the choices, but now I get to tap into my body and pay attention to what is the choice that I want to make. And, so that's one thing that you can do with children, but then also people who are at the beginning of that journey, like, okay, so great, I'm trying to practice my intuition, but like, where do I even begin? Because there's this huge wide world. You don't have to go outside and drive and be like, where do I go today? Like that seems really overwhelming, but you could do the same thing where it's like, give yourself a couple options of maybe like where to go or what to do or what to eat, and just before being impulsive, right? Because your ego is typically going to come in and make that choice, because that's how we've been making choices over the years. But slow down and just pay attention to, what is my body telling me? Which option is my body telling me? Which one does my body feel drawn to? And you may not know right off the bat, but just keep practicing it over and over and over and over again, and you'll start to get in tune with it.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful advice. I was thinking, I've got an example would be, I'm going to take my young adult daughters out for dinner tonight. And so you could easily go and, one's 21 and one's 27, and they're, just doing their thing. And it could be really easy. You can approach it like 2 ways, right? So I could go out and go, so how are you going, with your university, with your job? And it's all about what are you doing, but it's results focused. Instantly they've got to go then thinking, do I tell mum my grade? Do I tell her how am I stepping up? How my exams are going? Or do I actually just sit down and go, what are you learning about yourself at the moment? How are you growing? What really interests you, and what are you pursuing and why? And having the whole conversation there. It's amazing how we can just approach 2 different situations. And so then instantly, if I chose the second option, then, the girls aren't like, oh, well, we don't have to impress mum. We don't have to, perform, because that's that inner child's heart always, and then now I'm a mum of all adults, it's really interesting that you're still the mum. They still sort of, apologize for things. They still go, oh, you're not going to like this one or whatever. And it's actually really interesting. I still sort of juggle with that, going, oh yeah, that's right. I've got to spend more time on just, helping them on that journey, which is why I was asking you before, well, what would you tell your younger self almost? Like it's like the earlier we can get in tune with, ask people about themselves and how they're growing and what they're learning about themselves and why, actually supports the framework for them to know themselves better and to be comfortable in who they are, rather than you're almost like a better child if you get, the higher qualifications or the higher marks, or don't stop working or earn the amount of cash or whatever it is, because then as we know in our coaching world that, it's never enough, right?
Right. Right.
As soon as you get to that mountain, you find another massive one that you go, well, I hope, wow, if they love me there, imagine how much they'll love me if I get to the next bit, and you're focusing on the external reward, which is just so variable, and it might not resonate with you anyway. You're such an interesting lady, Anne. I'm really loving this conversation.
Thank you.
So what does success look like for a woman with your mindset? What is a successful woman?
I mean, I have major goals as far as, my vision, but success has been one of those things that I've had to really kind of, I don't want to say pull back on, because it sounds like I'm not striving, and it's not that. I'm always striving. But the same that, you were talking about with your daughters, especially with women, we've been in this society where our worth is in our doing, right? And the doing is very masculine. And as women, we've kind of been raised to just be in this masculine energy, which there is masculine energy when you are building a business. The energy of building is masculine. But with women, it's really about, how are we feeling? And so I've had to kind of pull back a bit, because I'm also an overachiever and I'm a perfectionist and all of those things. So I had to, again, kind of go back to my core values, right, of impact specifically, and how am I wanting to impact? And really, like, what is my mission? How do I help people embody their power and light? How do I take all of the things that I've learned in my own journey so far and keep creating content so that other people are changing their lives and being impacted by the work that I do? And so that's ultimately what I focus most on. Like, yes, I have financial goals, and yes, I have, I have more books that I'm currently working on, and I have a new podcast. I'm always doing things, right? So it's not about a lack of doing ever. But I really try to look at, at the end of the day, when I get into bed, have I really done everything that I can do to make an impact in the world? Have I done everything that I personally have control over? Because we don't always have control over the external results of everything, you know? And so I really spend a lot of time focusing on the feeling, right? Which is really the feminine, the feeling of, did I feel what I wanted to feel today? Did I align with my passion? Did I align with my purpose? Did I align with why I'm here? Did I feel like I genuinely connected with people? Do I feel like I expressed myself in the most loving way? So those are really the types of things that I focus most on. And what I have found is that when I really focus on that, everything else seems to come, so so it's what I have control over. Like, we always have control over our thoughts, our feelings, and yes, our action. But the thoughts and the feelings are really your intention. So if you don't have the intention backing up your action, the action you take doesn't really matter. So like, it's always going back to the thoughts and the feelings.
Yeah, totally. The thoughts and the feelings will always drive it, whether you're in tune with them or not, right?
Yep. Yep. So you might as well get in tune with them.
So those sabotagers out there, you go, yeah, we know where you're sabotaging. It's all down to your thoughts and your feelings and your intentional actions. And you can have incredible plans of how amazing things are going to be, but you're never going to do them if you don't believe that, one, that you can, and then two, that you're worthy of actually receiving that, and that you're and then also that you can then give back to those who you want to bless, and so you've got that all-rounded view on holistic view on what makes a successful person, for self, for growth, for contribution to giving back. But that's right. I think you've articulated it really well on, it's got to come. How do you feel at the end of the day? And I often think that I go, success is a feeling. I feel, for me, free. I feel of value. I feel happy. I feel calm. It's different things to different women. So everyone who comes on my podcast, I ask them, what does success look like or feel like? And it's really interesting that it's always a different answer. And that's it. Life is, you'll interpret it in a different way. So thank you so much for coming on my program today.
Thank you so much.
What is your website? Tell everyone your website. How do they find you?
It's anniegibbins.coaching.com.
anniegibbins.coaching.com. So go there, everybody. Check out Anne. If what she shared with you resonates with you, go and find her on the web. I'm sure she'd love to have a chat with you.
Absolutely.
On your journey. Terrific. Well, thank you so much. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
You're a beautiful, beautiful lady, changing the world in your own way. Love it. Love it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Memoirs of Successful Women. You can find me at anniegibbins.com, where you can download my free resources, get connected on social, and check out my online magic transformation program. If you love this show, feel free to subscribe to future episodes and, of course, share it with your friends. I'll see you again soon, and until then, happy podcasting.